Welcome to Good Talk English Podcast.
So I want to talk to you about a really specific, universally experienced modern feeling. I call it the fridge therapy session.
Oh, I like that. The fridge therapy session.
Right. You know exactly the moment I'm talking about. It's like 8:30 p.m. You are standing in your kitchen, just bathed in that really harsh fluorescent glow of the refrigerator light.
Yeah, just staring into the void.
Literally just staring blankly at like a half-empty jar of pickles or some yogurt. And the thing is, you're not even hungry. You are just completely, utterly drained.
You're exhausted, but a very specific kind of exhausted.
Exactly. And as you're standing there, you're wondering why your life feels so incredibly heavy right now, especially when there hasn't even been a major crisis. There's no massive tragedy you can point to, no broken arm, no sudden bankruptcy, no cinematic disaster.
Just this quiet, pervasive heaviness.
Yeah, the suffocating weight that just sits on your chest and refuses to leave.
Well, that heaviness actually has a name. And according to the data we are looking at for today's deep dive, it is a symptom of a highly specific modern disease.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, you are essentially looking at a nervous system that is just buffering. Like, you aren't falling apart in a spectacular way, but you certainly aren't thriving.
We just stuck.
Right. You are trapped in this exhausting middle ground, constantly functioning on the absolute margins of your energetic capacity.
Which brings us to the core mission of today's deep dive. Because the way we try to fix that fridge therapy feeling is it's completely flawed.
Oh, fundamentally, we go about it all wrong.
We wait for massive bursts of motivation. We tell ourselves, next Monday, I'm going to wake up at 5 a.m., I'm going to meal prep for the whole month, run a 10K, and just completely overhaul my entire existence.
The whole new year, new me mindset, even on a Tuesday.
Yeah, exactly. We treat change like it requires this lightning strike of divine inspiration. But the materials we are unpacking today, they completely shatter that illusion.
And we have a really fascinating stack of sources today.
We really do. We're pulling from an English language learning podcast that dissects the psychological weight of modern routines, an intense Arabic 30-day life reset guide, and a really profound spiritual discourse from Soul Talk.
Which is a brilliant combination because together they argue that true transformation, and more importantly, that spiritual alignment we are all desperately seeking, it has absolutely nothing to do with motivation.
Right. It comes from unglamorous, quiet, relentless discipline.
And that premise is a total paradigm shift, particularly for those in our audience who are, actively seeking deeper spiritual grounding, especially from an Islamic perspective.
Because motivation is just fickle.
It's biologically and emotionally fickle. It is entirely dependent on your blood sugar, how well you slept, or whether someone cut you off in traffic.
Oh, I lose my motivation instantly if traffic is bad.
Exactly. But discipline, however, is an architectural endeavor. You are basically building a safe house for your soul.
I love that phrasing, a safe house.
Right, because motivation is hoping the weather stays nice. Discipline is building a solid roof, so it really doesn't matter if it rains.
That makes so much sense. But before we can even talk about laying the bricks for that safe house, we kind of have to examine the invisible forces that are currently tearing our foundation apart.
Yeah, we have to look at the trap of the frantic modern day.
Because if we don't understand the mechanisms of our own exhaustion, any discipline we try to apply is just, it's like putting a bandage on a geyser.
It's completely useless. And the English podcast source actually perfectly diagnoses this as the going through the motions epidemic.
Oh, yeah, where you are physically present, but emotionally, you are basically a ghost.
Right. You answer your emails, you make your coffee, you nod in the meeting, but inside, your soul is literally that spinning loading wheel on a frozen computer screen.
Just perpetually buffering. And that raises a really fascinating biological question, right? Why do we feel this level of profound depletion when, objectively, we haven't done anything physically taxing?
Exactly. We haven't run a marathon. We haven't been out building a barn.
So why are we so tired?
Well, the issue is that we falsely attribute our exhaustion to massive life problems. It's what we might call the myth of the big disaster.
Like, we think we're exhausted because of the geopolitical climate.
Or the macroeconomy, or some looming career crisis. But the reality, as all our sources point out, is that we are dying the death of 1,000 paper cuts.
1,000 paper cuts. That is such a vivid way to put it.
Because it's true. It's not one huge cinematic crisis that breaks us. It is the microscopic daily friction.
It's like one rushed morning, one skipped breakfast.
Yes, 1 hour of doom scrolling in bed repeated 365 times a year.
And we ignore the paper cuts because no single one of them is life-threatening. We just brush it off. We say, oh, it's just one stressful commute.
Or it's just 20 minutes of scrolling TikTok. What's the big deal?
Right. But when just one becomes your baseline reality, your entire emotional landscape is permanently altered. You are just walking around with 1,000 tiny wounds, wondering why you feel dizzy all the time.
And to really understand the deepest of those wounds, we have to look at the Arabic 30-Day Reset Guide. Because it zeroes in on the ultimate thief of our modern vitality, which is cheap dopamine.
Okay, let's talk about cheap dopamine, because we hear that buzzword all the time.
We do, but we really need to understand the mechanism here. Dopamine isn't just about pleasure, it is literally the molecule of motivation.
That's what makes you want to do things.
Exactly. It's the chemical that makes you pursue goals. So when you are systematically stealing your own attention through an endless scroll of short-form videos, you are artificially spiking your dopamine levels.
Way past what is natural.
Right. And the human brain is highly adaptive. When you flood it with that cheap dopamine, it actually downregulates its own receptors. Your baseline just completely drops.
Wow. So that means normal, healthy activities suddenly feel agonizingly boring.
Absolutely agonizing.
Like reading a book, or having a deep conversation with your spouse, or, and this is huge for our Muslim listeners, like sitting quietly to read the Quran or do the tikrit.
Yes, that is such a vital connection.
Because if your brain is used to a new TikTok video every 3 seconds, sitting in stillness and trying to reflect spiritually is going to feel like physical torture.
You've essentially fried your own reward circuitry.
You really have. But I know a lot of people try to justify their screen time.
Oh, I do this all the time. I have to push back here. Because I think we justify it by, curating our feeds. I mean, you already know doom-scrolling prank videos at 2 a.m. is toxic. You don't need us to tell you that.
Sure, that's obvious.
But what about the educational binge? I'm talking about spending 2 hours watching videos on, how to optimize your calendar, or how to build the perfect workout split, or listening to people talk about Stoicism or Islamic history.
It feels productive, doesn't it?
It really does. That feels like learning. It feels super virtuous.
And that feeling of virtue is exactly what makes it so incredibly dangerous.
Wait, really? Yeah. The Arabic source issues a pretty ruthless warning about this. Self-development content is often the absolute most deceptive form of procrastination.
Ouch. Okay.
There's actually a documented psychological phenomenon behind this. It's called vicarious goal satiation.
Vicarious goal satiation.
Yeah.
Okay, break that down for me, because that sounds like the exact trap I fall into every single Sunday afternoon.
It's a very common trap. Because your brain's reward center is surprisingly easy to trick.
Oh, so.
Well, when you watch a highly edited, aesthetically pleasing video of someone else deep cleaning their house or organizing their life or hitting a massive fitness goal, your brain releases a hit of dopamine almost identical to the hit you would get if you had actually done the work yourself.
You are kidding me.
I'm serious. The brain cannot distinguish between the visual consumption of productivity and the physical execution of productivity.
That is genuinely terrifying. So my brain is getting the biochemical reward of accomplishment without having burned a single calorie of actual effort.
Exactly. You spend an hour watching videos on how to build a better morning routine, and at the end of the hour, you feel this deep, warm sense of satisfaction.
But my life hasn't changed at all. My bedroom is still a complete mess. My tasks are still totally undone. I've basically used self-help as a sedative.
A sedative disguised as a stimulant. Precisely.
Wow.
The source makes a brutal distinction that we all just really need to internalize. Watching is not progress. Executing is progress.
Watching is not progress. That hits hard.
It has to hit hard, because when you substitute the feeling of doing the work for actually doing the work, you deplete your nervous system while remaining entirely stagnant in your actual reality.
And I imagine this neurochemical depletion sets the stage for what is probably the most dangerous battleground of the modern human experience.
Oh, you mean the morning?
Yes, the morning war. This is where the English podcast source paints a picture that is almost painfully relatable, especially for our listeners who are trying to maintain a sense of spiritual grounding.
Let's paint that picture.
Okay, imagine this frantic baseline. You wake up late because you were trapped in that vicarious goal satiation loop until 1 a.m.
Classic.
Right. And the very first thing you do, before your feet even touch the floor, before you even fully open your eyes or acknowledge the new day, is you grab the little glowing glass rectangle next to your bed.
The worst possible move.
Instantly, you are flooded. You read an irritating email from a colleague. You see a terrifying news headline. You watch 10 seconds of an influencer living a life you absolutely cannot afford.
And biologically, you have just initiated a physiological catastrophe.
A catastrophe.
Literally. Because in a natural state, your body undergoes something called the cortisol awakening response. It's this gradual, healthy increase in cortisol that gently wakes you up and prepares you to face the day.
Okay, so cortisol isn't always bad.
No, it's necessary to wake up. But by grabbing the phone and mainlining the world's anxieties straight into your retinas while you are still horizontal, you hijack that entire system.
You just floor the gas pedal.
You throw your nervous system from a state of deep, restorative parasympathetic rest directly into a sympathetic, high-alert, fight-or-flight panic.
You are starting a literal war before you've even brushed your teeth.
Exactly.
And let's look at this through the spiritual lens that our audience cares so deeply about. Think about the concept of Fajr, the dawn prayer.
Oh, that's a perfect example.
Right. The entire spiritual architecture of the morning is designed for stillness. It is designed for you to wake up in the quiet, perform your physical ablution wudu, and stand before God before the demands of creation rush in.
It's meant to be a profound protective boundary.
Exactly. But when the very first thing you touch is your phone, you are actively rejecting that stillness. You are inviting the chaos of literally thousands of strangers into your bedroom before you've even acknowledged your creator.
Which completely explains why you leave the house feeling like you are escaping a natural disaster.
I know that exact feeling.
Yeah.
You put your shoes on with this bizarre, frantic adrenaline.
Yeah, you feel like you forgot something important. You check your pockets for your keys or your wallet. But what you've actually left behind, as the source points out, is your peace.
You left your peace on the nightstand.
And a chaotic morning has a very unique, venomous talent for ruining the rest of the day. Because your nervous system is already redlining by 8 a.m.
Right. So you spend the next 12 hours just reacting to minor inconveniences with massive impatience.
You snap at your kids. You feel totally overwhelmed by a simple email.
You are trying to function, but internally, your battery is literally at 1%.
Yeah. So if this frantic, overstimulated, biochemically hijacked morning is the disease, and I think everyone listening is probably nodding their heads right now, then what is the cure?
That is the million-dollar question. Because trying to feel better is clearly a failed strategy at this point.
You cannot outthink a fried nervous system.
You absolutely cannot outthink it, which is exactly why we have to pivot to the aggressive methodology of the Arabic 30-day reset guide.
Aggressive is the right word.
Because if the frantic morning is the disease, the cure is not waiting around for a magical burst of motivation. Motivation is a luxury you simply cannot afford right now.
So what is the cure?
The cure is enforcing a rigid, structural system that simply does not care how you feel. It is the conscious, deliberate choice of discipline over mood.
A system that does not care how you feel. That is such a crucial reframe.
Isn't it? And the first step of this 30-day reset is actually not about adding new, healthy habits. It is fundamentally subtractive. It is about aggressively cutting the noise.
Because you cannot build a new, intentional life on top of a foundation of constant digital distraction. It just won't work.
The source is pretty uncompromising here.
Yeah.
It demands that you ruthlessly sever your access to the things that do not build your future.
So a total digital quarantine.
Exactly. For 30 straight days, you delete Instagram, you delete TikTok, you delete any application whose sole purpose is to harvest your attention and sell it to advertisers.
It sounds extreme, but it's necessary. But it's not just about abstaining from screens, is it?
No, it's about fundamentally shifting the balance of your existential energy. The Arabic source provides this maxim that honestly hit me like a ton of bricks. It says, produce more than you consume. Stop escaping your life.
Stop escaping your life. We really need to linger on that phrase.
It's heavy.
It is. Because why do we scroll? Why do we actively seek out that cheap dopamine? We do it because our actual reality, our jobs, our relationships, our internal thoughts, it all feels uncomfortable or overwhelming or profoundly boring.
The phone is just a convenient escape hatch.
Exactly. But by locking that escape hatch, you force yourself to sit in the room with your own reality. You actually force yourself to experience boredom.
Which we hate.
We do. But historically and neurobiologically, boredom is the required precursor to creativity and meaningful action. You have to be bored to want to do something real.
But let's be super real about what happens when you lock that escape hatch. You delete the apps, you are staring at your phone, and it's just a blank screen. Your brain is absolutely screaming for its usual hit of dopamine.
It's basically withdrawals.
It is. And now what? Because this is the exact moment where the vast majority of people, myself definitely included, fail spectacularly at resetting their lives.
Oh yeah, the classic weekend overcorrection.
Right. You wake up on a Saturday with no social media and you decide, okay, today I'm going to fix my entire diet. I'm going to start a complex zero-based budget. I'm going to learn conversational Spanish, and I'm going to start training for a triathlon.
All before noon.
All before noon.
And by Sunday afternoon, you're sitting on the couch, eating a whole sleeve of cookies, staring at the ceiling, feeling 10 times worse than when you started.
Exactly. The ambition is incredibly pure, but the execution is biologically impossible. You're trying to install like 5 massive new software programs on a computer that is already crashing.
Which brings us to arguably the most brilliant pragmatic strategy from the Arabic Reset Guide, the One Direction rule.
Tell me about the One Direction rule.
Well, the fundamental reason people fail at self-transformation is that they diffuse their limited willpower across way too many disparate goals.
They spread themselves too thin.
Right. When you try to walk in 5 directions at once, you just remain frozen in place. You don't go anywhere. So the source demands that for these 30 days, you choose one measurable direction. Just one.
So it can't be a vague, ethereal goal like, I want to be a healthier person.
No, it has to be ruthlessly concrete. Like, I am going to do resistance training for 45 minutes 4 times a week, or I am going to study Python programming for 2 hours every single evening.
It must be a quantifiable metric.
It has to be quantifiable because you have to be able to objectively know if you succeeded or failed that day. There can't be any gray area.
But the immediate friction point listeners encounter here, and I've felt this too, is what if I have absolutely no idea what my one direction should be?
The paradox of choice.
Right. What if I am so disconnected from my own interests that I just don't know what to choose?
And the source offers an incredibly elegant hack for this exact paralysis.
Yeah.
If you are standing at a crossroads and every single path looks equally blurry, you don't sit there trying to philosophize your way to an answer.
You don't just think about it.
No, you write down 4 distinct interests. 4 things you think you might want to pursue. Let's say, writing a blog, learning Arabic, lifting weights, and graphic design.
Okay, 4 things.
And you commit to trying each one seriously for exactly 1 week.
So it's like A/B testing your own life.
Exactly. By the time you reach the end of the month, you will have accumulated hard, empirical data about your own psychology. You move from abstract guessing to concrete testing.
Because within that month, one of those paths will naturally generate less internal resistance than the others.
Right. One of them will feel slightly more aligned. I mean, it won't feel completely effortless, nothing worthwhile ever is, but it will feel like a natural fit.
And once you identify that path...
That becomes your one direction. You lock onto it and you ignore absolutely everything else.
But of course, identifying the path is only, what, 10% of the battle?
Barely 10%.
Right, because how do you ensure you don't quit when the novelty wears off? Because, make no mistake, by day 14 of this reset, your motivation will completely evaporate.
Oh, it will be gone.
You will be tired, it will be raining, and you will absolutely not want to do the work.
Which is where we transition from strategy to pure psychological engineering. The source emphasizes a concept that is a staple of productivity, but it actually explains the underlying psychology of why it works. And the rule is, don't break the chain.
Don't break the chain.
Yeah, and we have to understand the cognitive bias at play here. Human beings are profoundly visual creatures, and our brains are heavily wired for loss aversion.
Loss aversion. Meaning we hate losing things more than we like getting things.
Exactly. The pain of losing something we already possess is psychologically twice as powerful as the pleasure of gaining something new.
That's wild.
It is. And people do not quit their habits because they are inherently lazy. People quit because their progress feels invisible.
Oh, I see where you're going with this. If you lift weights every day for a week and you look in the mirror on Sunday, your biceps look exactly the same.
Exactly. The physical effort was massive, but the visual feedback is literally zero. And when you are putting in immense effort and seeing zero tangible results, despair is actually the logical biological response.
So how do you fix the feedback problem?
You have to artificially manufacture visual feedback. The source advises creating a stark, simple, physical checklist.
Like on your phone?
No, not a digital app, an actual piece of paper. Every single day that you execute your one direction, whether that's your workout, your studying, your prayer routine, you take a pen and you physically draw a thick, dark check mark in that box.
Okay, I can see how that feels satisfying.
It is, because as you do this day after day, you are building a visual chain of undeniable success. And human psychology dictates that once you see, say, a continuous 14-day chain, your loss aversion kicks in.
You don't want to break the streak.
Exactly. The psychological pain of breaking that beautiful chain becomes tangibly greater than the physical discomfort of doing the actual task. You will literally force yourself to study or work out simply because you refuse to ruin your streak.
You essentially trick your brain into becoming fiercely protective of its own momentum.
It's a brilliant hack.
And to ensure that this momentum doesn't just become, mindless robot behavior, the source includes a mandate for a weekly review.
Yes, the audit.
Right. You sit down at the end of the week and you conduct a ruthless audit of your own behavior. You ask yourself, where did I succeed? Where did I fall short?
You have to be honest with yourself.
Very honest. Like, did I miss Thursday's workout because my body genuinely needed rest or because I stayed up until 2 a.m. watching a movie?
Right. It's about treating the project of your life with the same rigorous analytical respect you would give to, like, a high-stakes corporate initiative.
You are basically transitioning from being a passive passenger, just battered by the whims of your environment, to becoming the active architect of your reality.
Which is incredibly empowering. But as we discuss this, we really need to address the elephant in the room, because I know exactly how this sounds to a listener who is already feeling totally burnt out.
Oh, I know too. They're listening to us and thinking, this sounds utterly exhausting.
Totally.
They're like, strict discipline, daily checklists, severing my digital entertainment, conducting weekly audits of my failures. This sounds incredibly cold. It sounds like a corporate dystopia.
They're thinking, I'm trying to find peace, and you're telling me to turn my life into a military boot camp.
Exactly. And that is because the word discipline has suffered basically the worst public relations campaign in human history.
It really has. When we hear the word, we immediately picture, like, a red-faced drill sergeant screaming at us to do push-ups in the freezing mud.
Right. We associate discipline with punishment, deprivation, and suffering.
But when we synthesize the linguistic insights from the English podcast with the deep spiritual wisdom of the soul talk discourse, a completely different, almost beautiful reality emerges.
Because true discipline is not about punishing yourself for being flawed.
No, not at all. True discipline is actually the highest form of self-care. It is about creating a structure of emotional support and neurological safety within your own mind.
And the foundational pillars of this safety are what I like to call the unbreakable bookends of your day.
The bookends. The morning and the evening.
Yes. These are the two transitional periods where your nervous system is the absolute most vulnerable. By controlling the bookends, you create a fortress that protects everything in the chaotic middle of the day.
So let's re-examine the morning, but this time not as a war zone, but as an opportunity for an intentional start. Because the English podcast makes a really vital point here. An intentional morning does not require the discipline of a mountain monk.
Oh, thank goodness. That is a massive relief for anyone who has ever tried to follow a billionaire's morning routine.
Right. You do not need a 3-hour, 12-step, perfectly curated ritual that requires you to wake up at 4 a.m., jump into a freezing ice bath, drink a $40 green juice, and meditate in perfect lotus position.
If that works for you, wonderful. But for 99% of humanity, that is an absurd and completely unsustainable standard.
Most of us are just trying to locate a clean pair of socks and make sure the kids haven't glued the dog to the carpet.
Exactly. The goal of the morning bookend is not aesthetic perfection. The goal, as the source brilliantly articulates, is simply less aggression at 7 a.m.
Less aggression. I love that. It's about easing the transition between sleep and the demands of the waking world.
And the actions the source recommends are almost laughably simple, but their impact is massive.
Like what?
Like, you wake up, instead of looking at your phone, you drink a large glass of water. You walk over and you physically open the curtains to let natural sunlight hit your eyes.
Simple, yeah.
You sit on the edge of the bed in total silence for exactly 60 seconds. And you do a gentle stretch of your spine. That's it.
While those actions sound trivial, neurologically they are performing some incredibly heavy lifting.
Break that down.
Well, let's look at the sunlight, for example. Getting natural lux levels into your eyes within minutes of waking naturally suppresses residual melatonin and perfectly calibrates your circadian rhythm.
That makes biological sense.
But more importantly, the psychological signaling of these slow, deliberate actions is profound. When you choose to sit in silence for 60 seconds rather than immediately reacting to a phone notification, you are sending a clear biological message to your amygdala.
The fear center of the brain.
Right. You are telling it, we are safe, there is no predator, there is no emergency, we are simply beginning the day.
The source phrases this as allowing your mind to arrive in your body. Because we wake up physically the exact moment the alarm goes off. But our consciousness, our soul, takes time to boot up.
It needs a minute to catch up.
Right. By easing in, you allow the soul to catch up to the physical form. You create a quiet, sacred space before the world is allowed to ask anything of you.
And if that quiet space is the first bookend, the second bookend, the evening, is arguably the master switch of your entire life.
Because the quality of your evening bookend entirely dictates the possibility of your morning bookend.
Exactly. The restorative evening. I really want to dive deep into this because the English podcast source delivers a metaphor here that is just devastatingly accurate. They say that we treat our evenings like the emotional leftovers of the day.
Oof, the emotional leftovers is a tragic reality.
It really is. Think about where your premium energy goes. You give your sharpest focus, your deepest patience, and your most vibrant energy to your employer, to your commute, to navigating traffic, to smiling at colleagues you barely even know.
And then, at 6 p.m.
You cross the threshold of your home, returning to the people you supposedly love the most, and returning to yourself, and you have absolutely nothing left to offer but the frayed, exhausted scraps of your nervous system.
We basically just crawl toward bedtime with zero sense of emotional closure.
Yeah, and worse, we actively lie to ourselves about the nature of our rest.
Oh, how so?
Well, you sit on the couch and say, I am going to relax now. And how do you relax? You spend the next 2 hours staring at a screen, becoming intensely emotionally invested in a political argument between 15 anonymous strangers in a comment section.
Or you decide to check just one work email on your phone, and suddenly your brain is thrust right back into the office, mentally rewriting a quarterly report at 11:30 at night.
And the result is that you end up completely frazzled. That specific word from the source captures the feeling perfectly.
Frazzled. It's like your brain is a web browser with 35 tabs open.
Exactly. Music is playing from one of them, the cooling fan is screaming, and you can't figure out how to shut it down. You are deeply, fundamentally depleted.
Which is why the evening routine cannot simply be about stopping work. It must be actively, aggressively restorative.
And the distinction between numbing and restoring is critical.
Explain that, because people confuse those two all the time.
Numbing activities like scrolling social media, binge-watching really intense television, or drinking anesthetize you to the stress temporarily. But they do not recharge the battery.
You're just hitting pause on the pain.
Right. But restorative activities actually give energy back to your system. They actively reduce the friction of existence.
So what does a restorative evening actually look like in practice? Let's get practical.
It is entirely about intentional deceleration and signaling safety to the body. It means turning off the harsh overhead lights and using warm lamps to signal to your pineal gland that the sun has actually set.
Setting the mood for your brain.
Right. It means taking a warm shower, which physically lowers your core body temperature, a biological prerequisite for entering deep sleep.
Okay.
It involves extreme acts of mundane kindness to your future self, like laying out the clothes you will wear tomorrow or prepping the coffee maker so that you don't have to expend decision-making energy the moment you wake up.
I love that. Mundane kindness to your future self.
It really is. And it might mean reading a few pages of a physical book, not a dense business strategy book, but something beautiful or calming.
Because, as the source makes brilliantly clear, rest is not a synonym for sleep. Rest is the conscious activity you engage in before sleep.
Exactly.
Rest is how you systematically convince your physical body that it is safe enough to let go of the day's hypervigilance. If your brain believes it is still under threat because you are reading terrifying news articles at midnight, it will flatly refuse to allow you to enter the deep restorative stages of REM and slow-wave sleep.
You'll just toss and turn.
And you will wake up exhausted, and this cycle just continues.
So if we pull all of this together, what the Arabic Productivity Guide and the English Linguistic Podcast are really teaching us is that adult routines are a mechanism for emotional stability.
Stability in a chaotic world.
Because the world is inherently chaotic. It is full of unpredictable demands, health scares, financial stress, and relational friction. Finding joy and excitement in simply preparing for tomorrow, in knowing that your bag is packed and your environment is peaceful, is a profound form of self-love and spiritual maturity.
So what does all this discipline actually amount to. It means that these unbreakable bookends are not about turning yourself into some hyper-optimized Silicon Valley productivity machine.
Not at all.
They are a declaration of sovereignty. They are a boundary you draw around your life that says, my peace matters, my spiritual energy matters. I will not allow the relentless noise of the modern world to consume every single inch of my existence.
But this raises the absolute most important question of our entire discussion today.
What's that?
Well, when you build these bookends, when you enforce the 30-day reset, when you clear out the digital noise and stop the frantic rushing, you create a massive, clean, quiet space in your life.
You've hollowed it out.
Right. The critical question is, what do you fill that space with?
Exactly. Because an empty room is just an empty room. Nature abhors a vacuum. If you don't fill that space intentionally, the noise will just rush right back in.
It always does.
And this is where our deep dive takes a really beautiful, massive pivot. This is where we transition from the mechanics of organizing your schedule to the deep, profound work of organizing your soul.
We move directly into the spiritual waters of our third source.
The soul talk discourse.
Right. We are moving from the secular execution of discipline into the spiritual payoff of that discipline. This is the journey to Sakina.
Sakina. Now, for those in our audience who might not be deeply familiar with the term, the Arabic word Sakina translates roughly to deep inner peace, profound tranquility, or divine serenity.
But the Soul Talk source makes a really crucial intervention here, because the modern Western definition of peace is completely flawed.
Oh, so?
We have been conditioned to believe that peace means a life with zero problems. We think peace is sitting on a white sand beach in the Maldives with no emails, no responsibilities, and a completely empty mind.
Like an endless vacation?
Right. But the source explicitly states that Sakina is not a straight, unbothered line. It is not the absence of chaos.
The spiritual nuance here is just breathtaking. The source redefines Sakina not as the removal of the storm, but as the ability to remain profoundly calm within the storm.
Yes, it is the deep internal realization that the chaos of the world, the economic downturns, the interpersonal conflicts, the daily stressors can rage all around you, but it does not have permission to enter you.
The storm continues outside, but it stops at the boundary of your soul.
It is the eye of the hurricane. The winds are spinning at 150 miles an hour, tearing trees out of the ground, but right in the center, there is absolute, untouchable stillness.
And the source is very careful to emphasize that attaining Sakina does not mean you transform into some unfeeling stoic robot who never experiences grief or stress.
Right. It's not about suppressing your humanity.
Sakina is a return. It is a journey back to your fitra, your true, pure, original self. The quiet, deeply grounded version of you that still exists beneath the suffocating layers of modern anxiety, societal expectations, and relentless digital noise.
And as you practice the quiet discipline we've been outlining, as you protect your mornings and honor your evenings, the source reveals that your fundamental internal definitions begin to violently shift.
You experience a complete paradigm shift regarding what life is actually about.
Let's look at the concept of success, for instance.
Yes. For our entire lives, we are taught that success is a frantic, never-ending list of external acquisitions.
It is a job title, a specific salary, a zip code.
The brand of car you drive, or the number of people who like your photos online. But as Sakina takes root in that quiet space you've built, the definition changes entirely.
Success ceases to be an external metric. It becomes an internal state.
Success becomes the deep, unshakable feeling of contentment with what you have been given and who you are striving to be.
The entire metric shifts from relentless acquisition to profound contentment. And this shift also completely redefines our understanding of comfort.
Because we often conflate comfort with escapism.
We do. We think comfort means abandoning our responsibilities, quitting the difficult job, or walking away from challenging relationships.
Just dropping everything.
But true, spiritual comfort is finding the elegant balance between fulfilling your worldly responsibilities and fiercely protecting your own well-being. It is learning how to carry your heavy load with grace, rather than just dropping the load entirely.
But carrying that heavy load with grace requires a psychological and spiritual skill that is completely alien to modern hustle culture.
What's that?
The source explores this beautifully, the power of letting go, because you absolutely cannot experience Sakina if you're running around desperately trying to micromanage the universe.
Oh, the micromanagement of reality is the ultimate source of modern anxiety. We suffer deeply because we believe that every thought that enters our mind is an undeniable fact that requires an immediate, panicked reaction.
The source offers a phenomenal way to visualize this. Usually people say treat your thoughts like clouds, But honestly, that's a bit cliché.
It's too passive.
Right. Let's look at it the way the source's underlying mechanism suggests. Think of your mind like the luggage carousel at a busy airport.
I love this analogy.
Your thoughts, your anxieties, your fears about the future, they are just suitcases coming down the conveyor belt.
That is a much more accurate metaphor for the modern brain.
Right. You are standing there, and a thought comes down the belt. What if I fail this project? And then another one follows right behind it. What if the economy crashes?
Heavy bags.
Super heavy bags. And our instinct, our anxiety, makes us feel like we have to pick up every single heavy bag that comes down the carousel and just carry it around the airport.
Which is exhausting.
But sakina is the realization that you don't have to pick up the bag. You can just stand there, observe the heavy, terrifying suitcase, and watch it ride the conveyor belt right back through those little rubber flaps and disappear.
You only pick up the bags that actually belong to you.
Exactly. The actions you can control in the present moment.
That is the essence of cognitive diffusion, brought into a spiritual context. Not every internal thought is a fact. And if we connect this back to the broader theme of discipline, we reach a profound realization.
How so?
Well, we initially defined discipline as knowing what to control. Controlling your screen time, your morning routine, your habits.
The 30-day reset stuff.
Right. But the spiritual source reveals that the absolute highest form of discipline is actually possessing the profound wisdom to know what not to control.
You have to master the art of leaving things alone.
The art of leaving things alone. That directly contradicts everything we are taught. Hustle culture screams at us to force outcomes, to grind, to manipulate every single variable until the universe yields to our demands.
But the spiritual perspective of sakina, and this touches on the deep Islamic concept of tawakkul, or reliance on the divine, offers a completely liberating alternative.
It really does. It teaches that your responsibility ends at your effort.
You do your absolute best. You put in the strict discipline we discussed in the 30-day reset. You build your systems. You show up with integrity.
But the very moment the action is complete, you completely relinquish the result to God.
You detach from the outcome entirely.
Exactly. And this is not passivity. This is not laziness. You are acting with intense, disciplined focus, but you are completely severing yourself from the crippling anxiety of the result.
Relinquishing the obsessive, exhausting need to control how things turn out is what finally truly unburdens the soul.
You realize, perhaps for the first time in your adult life, that holding the universe together is not your job.
Man, just saying those words brings a physical sense of relief to my chest. Holding the universe together is not your job.
It's a huge weight off.
But let's be incredibly practical here. Sustaining this level of discipline and maintaining this profound state of sakina is incredibly difficult. You cannot do it purely on your own willpower.
No, because willpower is just a biological battery, and eventually that battery depletes. You cannot build a sturdy, enduring spiritual house on a foundation of sheer grit.
You need a deeper anchor.
If you rely only on white-knuckling your way through life, you will inevitably crack. Which brings us to the final and unequivocally most vital segment of our deep dive. The ultimate anchors required to sustain this transformation.
Faith, boundaries, and immense self-compassion.
Let's start with the deepest, most foundational anchor. The expert source from Soul Talk does not mince words here. It highlights the core spiritual message for our listeners. The absolute greatest source of peace, the ultimate inexhaustible wellspring of sakina, is closeness to God.
In Arabic, this concept is al-qurb min Allah.
And we really must distinguish this from the secular trend of mindfulness.
Because they get confused a lot.
They do. Secular mindfulness asks you to simply be present in the moment, to observe your breath. It is a useful tool, but it is limited. This spiritual framework asks you to be present with the divine. It elevates the practice entirely.
The source emphasizes that when you actively place your worries, your anxieties, and your terrifying, uncontrollable future into the hands of the Creator, the internal architecture of your mind completely shifts.
Because the burden is no longer yours to carry alone.
And the source provides the exact practical mechanisms for maintaining this closeness. It focuses heavily on Salah, the 5 daily ritual prayers.
That's a perfect connection to what we've been talking about.
I really want to look at Salah through the lens of everything we've talked about today regarding the frantic modern day. Think about what a profound disruption Salah actually is.
It's forced deceleration.
Yes. 5 times a day, regardless of how busy you are, regardless of how important your email is, you are mandated to stop the treadmill.
You disconnect entirely from the digital noise.
You physically wash yourself, the voodoo in a state of purification, and you reconnect with the eternal.
From a strictly neurological standpoint, Sala is the ultimate divine pattern interrupt.
Explain the neurology of it.
Well, when you are rushing through your day, your sympathetic nervous system is highly active. You're stressed. When you stop, perform ablution with cool water, and enter the physical postures of prayer, particularly sujood, the prostration where your head is below your heart, you are forcing your biology into a parasympathetic restorative state.
You are literally grounding your physical body while elevating your spirit.
It is the perfect antidote to the buffering soul.
And the source goes further, highlighting the power of dua sincere, intimate supplication. This isn't ritualistic chanting. It is a deeply personal, vulnerable conversation with your Creator, where you pour out your specific fears, your inadequacies, and your hopes.
Coupled with honest, conscious silence.
Right, not sitting quietly to empty your mind, but sitting quietly to recognize the overwhelming presence of God. The source says these practices ignite a light inside you.
A light that no external darkness, no corporate stress, no digital anxiety can ever extinguish.
You arrive at the profound, unshakable realization that despite the howling chaos of the world, you are never, ever truly alone.
And when you possess that internal spiritual light, your natural biological instinct is to protect it. Which leads us directly to the second anchor for sustaining sakina.
Setting fierce boundaries.
Sakina is a precious commodity, and therefore it requires a fortress. You cannot maintain this inner peace if you leave the doors to your soul wide open, allowing every passing stressor, every unreasonable demand, and every toxic interaction to literally walk right into your living room.
This is a critical point to hit hard, because especially in many community-oriented cultures, we are taught that being a good or righteous person means being endlessly available.
Right. We internalize the idea that saying yes to every request is a moral virtue and saying no is selfish.
But the spiritual source challenges this completely. It states with total clarity that you do not have to be available to everyone all the time.
We have to analyze the psychology of boundaries here. Saying no at the appropriate time is rarely a malicious rejection of another human being. It is fundamentally an act of self-preservation.
When you begin to live with the kind of intention we've discussed today, you naturally become highly selective.
You become selective about where you expend your limited physical energy. You become fiercely protective of who gets access to your time.
And most importantly, you become a strict bouncer at the door of your own mind, controlling which thoughts and conversations you allow to take root.
The source frames this in a way that completely changed my perspective. It says that silence and the quiet withdrawal from situations, debates, or relationships that actively harm your spirit is an act of profound bravery, not weakness.
Stepping away from an online argument you don't need to have isn't losing. It is actively protecting your peace.
It is the ultimate victory of discipline over ego. Your ego screams at you to engage, to prove the other person wrong, to win the debate, to have the last word.
But your discipline, your sakina, recognizes that the argument is a trap designed to drain your light. Walking away is the ultimate flex of spiritual strength.
But listen, even with all of this, even if you build the unbreakable bookends, even if you execute the 30-day reset flawlessly, even if you anchor yourself in prayer and set ironclad boundaries, we are still flawed, fragile human beings.
We are going to fail.
We are going to slip up. And the Soul Talk source offers an incredibly beautiful, tender reminder for those inevitable moments of failure.
It tells us, frankly, that you will still have days where you feel like you have completely slid back to square one.
You will have days of tears. You will have moments of severe weakness.
There will be a Tuesday where the alarm goes off, and despite all your knowledge, you hit snooze, grab your phone, scroll for an hour, and lose the morning war all over again.
And this is exactly where the final anchor, immense radical self-compassion, becomes the structural glue that holds your entire life together.
If discipline is not perfectly paired with compassion, it quickly metastasizes into self-tyranny.
Discipline just becomes another heavy weapon you use to beat yourself up for not being a perfect, flawless machine.
The source instructs us to treat ourselves with the exact same boundless kindness and grace that we would instinctively offer a dear, beloved friend.
Think about it. If your best friend came to you on the verge of tears and said, "I messed up my routine today, I broke my streak, I'm a total failure," you would never yell at them.
You would never tell them they are worthless.
You would put a hand on their shoulder and say, "It's okay. You are exhausted. You are carrying a heavy load. Get some sleep, and we will simply start again tomorrow.
You have to train your internal monologue to speak to yourself with that exact same voice of mercy.
Because your past mistakes, your broken daily chains, your moments of spiritual regression, they are merely lessons.
They are neutral data points showing you where your system needs adjustment.
They are absolutely not permanent, damning judgments on your character or your inherent worth as a human being.
And crucially, the source issues a final command. Stop comparing your highly individual journey to the highlight reels of others.
The internet is literally a billion-dollar machine engineered to generate comparison and inadequacy.
But your timeline is uniquely divinely yours. The source urges you to trust the timing of your life. Every delay you've experienced, every painful setback, every quiet, frustrating season of unseen growth where you felt like you were falling behind, it all has a profound divine purpose.
You are exactly where you need to be right now, in this very second, to learn the exact lesson you need to learn.
That is the ultimate peak expression of faith and sakina. To be able to look at your beautifully flawed, incredibly messy, in-progress life and say, with total conviction, this is exactly as it should be for this exact moment.
Wow.
Okay, let's take a deep breath and recap the massive transformative ground we've covered in this deep dive. We started by diagnosing the modern condition, the chaotic, frantic digital treadmill that leaves our souls buffering and our batteries completely drained.
We looked at the biological trap of cheap dopamine and the illusion of vicarious goal satiation.
From there, we explored the harsh but profoundly necessary medicine of the Arabic 30-day reset. Ruthlessly cutting the digital noise, empirically discovering your one direction, and leveraging human psychology through daily checklists to build an unbreakable chain of focused discipline.
We redefine that discipline not as punishment, but as emotional safety, anchored by the unbreakable bookends of a biologically intentional morning and a deeply restorative evening that prepares the body for true rest.
And ultimately, we discovered that these strict, quiet routines are merely the scaffolding. They create the quiet space necessary to achieve the ultimate spiritual payoff. Sakina, that deep inner peace within the storm, fueled by a profound closeness to God.
We learned that true peace requires letting go of outcomes, setting brave boundaries against the noise, and treating our own inevitable failures with radical, forgiving grace.
It is a profound journey, from the frantic chaos of the external world to the quiet, untouchable sanctuary of the internal soul. And as we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you, the listener, with a final, provocative thought, something to deeply mull over as you transition back into the reality of your day.
We spend so much of our brief, precious lives waiting. We wait for the perfect burst of motivation to finally build a better life. We wait for that magical fictional future where all our financial, relational, and personal problems are perfectly solved, hoping that once everything is flawless, we will finally be allowed to feel peace.
But what if our entire foundational premise is backwards? What if peace is not the grand final reward you receive at the end of a perfectly executed, flawless life? What if peace is simply the quiet, steadfast companion that sits down beside you the very moment you decide to take disciplined control of your next 10 minutes?
That is the truth right there. You do not have to fix your entire life today. The universe is not yours to hold together, but you can conquer the next 10 minutes.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. I want to challenge you to do just one thing today. Find a way to carve out 5 deliberate moments of conscious, intentional silence. Step away from the screens, let the heavy bags pass by on the conveyor belt, take a deep breath, and let your soul finally arrive in your body. Until next time, take care of yourselves and fiercely protect your peace.